Yes, we are live on Facebook now.
Okay, dear friends, we welcome you all. Dear friends, we welcome you all once again to this talk by our dear friend and guide, Sri Pratik Desai ji. Pratik ji, very scholar that he reads and then he disseminates, decodes the subtle meanings uh, of the Vaishnav scriptures and makes it easy for the layman to understand the philosophy. So today, Pratik ji is going to talk about how Bhakti Yoga is the most transcendental path, and all other paths which somehow are connected to the material uh, mode. Bhakti is truly transcendental and spiritual. So over to you, Pratik ji, if you can give us
Okay.
the discourse.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Rajiv, for the kind introduction, and just wanted to add one more point to just apart from being Vaishnava scriptures, I think what conclusively we have proven in the last so many sessions is that this Bhagavad Gita and the Vaishnava scriptures, they are also revealing the conclusion and the essence of all the scriptures as well as of all the philosophies, because it gives a very complete holistic reconciliation of all the different aspects of philosophy. So that's why Vaishnava scriptures, they are naturally to be considered as the that's why Gita is also called as Gita Upanishad. And we have discussed only on the Bhagavad Gita. We have analyzed only the Bhagavad Gita based on the assumption that Bhagavad Gita is actually the ultimate crux of all the scriptures, gives the essence of the scriptures. If that is not the case, then there is no point of discussing Bhagavad Gita because it becomes an inferior scripture. So that sense, the Vaishnava scriptures actually, they must come into the forefront. They should come into the limelight. Otherwise, there is a tendency amongst people to minimize the position of these scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and the Puranas also. Okay. So now, one frequently asked question is that why does Krishna speak about other paths when Bhagavad Gita, as we have concluded, that Bhagavad Gita only is ultimately it concludes into Bhakti Yoga. So why does Krishna talk about other paths? He could have just mentioned that just surrender to me, just submit to me, just please my desire, my will, and that's enough for anyone. So then why he's talking about different paths? So this is not so difficult to understand because whenever we try to learn something, that knowledge has to be understood by us. It should be digested very thoroughly. If we do not understand, then we'll not be able to pursue that knowledge or will not be able to follow and practice that. So, like just for example, if you teach a child about a very complicated subject matter which is studied in the PhD level, he'll not be able to understand anything. But when he matures, he grows up, his consciousness, his intelligence will expand, and he'll be able to receive the knowledge and he'll be able to understand it, because the more mature we become, the more we can understand things very easily. With so it will be within less time we can actually understand things as they are, right? That's why those who have grown up, they have much more maturity than those who are child. So similarly, people have different faiths, and they are also influenced by different conditions of the material world. They are in different circumstances, and they are influenced by the modes of material nature. So there are three types of mode of material nature. which is goodness, passion, ignorance. I think everyone is aware of that. Goodness leads one to peace, steadiness, happiness, whereas the mode of passion makes one very um, restless in nature, and because of that, it keeps one always in anxiety, stressful. Although you can say passion is also required to in order to work in the material world as well as to achieve our goals, but the same passion can lead us to bewilderment, because if it is not balanced by the proper knowledge and understanding, then we can become greedy or we can become very anxious for certain things. So passion definitely does not lead to peace, happiness, and satisfaction. Generally, it does not lead to that. It's only the mode of goodness. And then finally, we have the ignorant mode. Everyone knows that we cannot do anything properly with the right determination, motive to achieve certain things with ignorance. So ignorance is definitely not the recommended stage for any person. It is only the mode of goodness through which we can actually enlighten ourselves. So this everyone understands and everyone agrees on that, and that's why Krishna has dedicated a couple of chapters based on the faith of different people, and then not just on the faith, but he also speaks about what you eat, you become like that. So he also talks about the uh, different types, categories of foods that can instigate you, that can influence you, and the characteristics and the qualities of persons who are in different modes of material nature. So because of that, it is not going to be possible that everyone is going to take the path of bhakti, because that's our own free will and it's our own conditioning. Ultimately, everyone has to accept the path because of their own free will, or own desire, own choice. You cannot force someone. If you force, then things become robotic in nature. Then you cannot say that love exists, because love only exists when you have a free will. You can only love someone when you want to love some person. You cannot be forced to love someone. So depending on the different nature of people in different modes of material nature, they have they have acquired different characteristics, qualities, and they do not think like everyone else. So all of us are individuals. We are going to be different from each other, and the difference is actually something that is a very um, I can say that it's a wonderful identity that we have, because let's say that if every one of us becomes like a single person, like one person, then what will be the value of other people? Because everyone is the same. So how is your what is your contribution? Because anyways, your contribution will not matter, because the same contribution a person can get from one person. So that eliminates the need of any other living entity in this world, any other human being. So then there is only need for one person, because you are all replicas of the same person. So then it minimizes the value of a person if we are all the one and the same. But when we have different traits and personalities, then and then we people are there are unlimited people in this planet. So when they have so many different personalities, then you can actually enjoy relationship with them. So the Lord also is Akhil Rasamrit, and he also likes to associate with all the individual human beings personally. And what taste is he going to get if everyone is like one and the same? We can also experience in the material world, when we have a relationship with a person, if all people are like the same person, then what great is to connect with others. So there are different categories of people, and it is variety is definitely a virtue, and variety can only happen when there are differences. So differences is going to be there when you have different consciousness, and that consciousness will come from your actions. So that's why we have different paths recommended in the Gita. But the goal of the path is also very clear. Like for example, you go to school, then you go to college, then you go to a graduate college, I mean school, whatever like you call it, and then finally you go for a PhD program. So the goal of a person who wants to achieve master's or doctorate program in particular field, the goal is always there. So your whatever you are learning in school, it is providing you a very grounded knowledge, a basic knowledge, basic understanding of the world around us. Then you become more specific, and then later you become extremely specific. So that is the way it should go forward. So that's why the Lord is giving different paths, so that because there are different paths going to be existing. Everyone is not going to be able to accept at that particular time. One is not going to be able to accept that path, which is Bhakti Yoga. So people require alternatives because they are attached to these different paths. They cannot quickly come to Bhakti Yoga. So that's why uh, the Lord is recommending that people, wherever they are at, they practice that path, get purified, and then ultimately he also declares Bhakti Yoga to be the final goal of all these paths. So that we have, I think, already discussed about it. So this is how we understand different faiths, different modes of material nature, how it influences. And environment is also a product of the modes of material nature. That also is very obvious. Okay, so any questions or comment till now?
No problem. All fine.
Okay, so now we'll try to establish how the position of Bhakti Yoga is transcendental to modes of nature. Okay, so see, so as a result of the influence of the modes of material nature, the different yoga paths are assigned to different practitioners. By the law of necessity, there must be at least one yoga system, if not more, that is not a byproduct of these modes. That is obvious because the entire purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to enlighten Arjun, because he was influenced by the modes of material nature. So basically, the entire goal of Gita is to liberate him from the modes of material nature, to acquire such a position or state where he can be completely satisfied, happy. So that kind of stage has to be there. Otherwise, what is the need of bhakti, path of bhakti, or the Bhagavad Gita also? So if there is not, then all living entities are destined to be bound in the cycle of birth, death, old age, disease eternally. So this reasoning follows the law of causality. If the cause of adopting a yoga practice is a product of the material energy, such a yoga system cannot generate transcendence. So the transcendence can only be generated when it is free from the modes of material nature. So how will a practitioner become free from modes of nature? There must be some system independent of material energy that can award ultimate liberation. So the answer to this dilemma is addressed by Lord Krishna. The 14th chapter discusses the topic of the three modes of material nature. And in verse number 21, Arjuna is asking three important questions. Arjun Vacha Kerlingastrin Gunan Etan Tito Bhavati Prabho Kim Achara Katham Chaitam Stringunan Ati Vartate. Arjuna inquired, "O my dear Lord, by what symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes. What is his behavior? And how does he transcend the mode of nature? So let me share the screen. There are some verses here. Okay, so we just read verse number 21. And now the next verse number 26. So verse number 26, the Lord replies. Okay, so 14th chapter, verse number 26. Mam cha yoga vicharena bhakti yoga na sevate sagunan samatitya brahma bhoyaya kalpate. All right, synonyms: mam unto me, cha also, ya a person who, or vyabhicharena without fail, bhakti yogena by devotional service, sevate renders service, sa he gunan the modes of material nature, samatitya transcending itan all these, brahma bhoyaya elevated to the Brahman platform, kalpate becomes. Translation: one who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Okay. So the words of this verse do not lend themselves to misinterpretation. So the verse itself is very clear about how to transcend the modes of material nature. Krishna gives a comprehensive, one-pointed, direct answer to Arjuna's third question. He clearly states the practice of Bhakti Yoga to be the only means of Gunan Samititya or transcending the modes. There is no hint or indirect understanding that implies some other practice which would elevate one to transcendence. The use of the word vyabhicharena qualifies that the nature of the devotion must be unfailing. Unfailing means uninterrupting, bearing any practice other than bhakti. This qualification is similar to the use of the word ananya. The implication is that any practice other than continual devotional service will not render one free of modes of nature. Thus, it is exclusively established that no practice other than bhakti yoga can elevate one to transcendence. It is thus concluded that bhakti yoga is transcendent to the modes of material nature. So the other yoga practices are meant to direct their practitioners to ultimate liberation is obvious. Otherwise, the entire Gita becomes meaningless. But as they are not of a transcendental nature, they can only direct such proponents to a process that is. So it is very clear that if Bhakti Yoga is the only process by which one leads to transcendence, the other paths they have to lead to Bhakti Yoga. Otherwise, other paths can lead to different directions. It will not lead to transcendence, and that will uh, make the purpose of Bhagavad Gita fruitless. So the only process as shown above that is described as being transcendental is bhakti. Bhakti is not acquired by any material means. So knowledge of the opulences of the absolute or transcendental knowledge is a direct cause of bhakti yoga. The use of the words avikalpena yogena are synonymous with ananya bhakti. So here in the 10th chapter 7th verse, Etam vibhutim yogam cha mama yoveti tatvata. So vikalpena yogena yujyate natra samshaya. Itam, all this vibhutim, opulence, yogam, mystic power, cha also mama of mind, ya anyone who veti knows. Tatvata, factually, so he. Avikalpena, without division, yogena, devotional service, yujyate, is engaged. Na, never, atra here, samshaya, doubt. One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. So avikalpena yogena, that is translated as unalloyed devotional service. So the use of words are synonymous with ananya bhakti, avikalpena yogena, because earlier what we have established is that yoga means bhakti, or it is also related to bhakti. And then we already established earlier that bhakti is also independent. It is not dependent on any other process. Whereas the other processes, they all depend on bhakti to acquire the results of that process or path. So this understanding of use of the word yogena as synonymous with bhakti yoga concurs with the definition of yoga, which arose from the earlier confirmation of what we have done. So this rendition is confirmed by analysis of contextual consistency of the word as used in 10.7. The following verse 10.8 explains the nature of that yoga practice as being Matva Bhajante Mam. The words Bhajante Mam are exclusive devotional terms, thus confirming that Yogena means Bhakti Yoga here. Alright, so we'll see the next verse. अहम सर्वस्य प्रभवो मतः सर्वं प्रवर्तते इति मत्वा भजन्ते मां गुणभाव समान्वित. Aham, I, Sarvasya of all, Prabhava, the source of generation, Mata, from me, Sarvam, everything, Pravartate, and emanates, iti, thus, Matva, knowing, Bhajante, become devoted, Mam, unto me, Buddha, the learned, Bhava, Samanvita, with great attention. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly knows this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So here it is very clear. Matva bhajante mam is directly given, and it is also connected to the previous verse because it is talking about the type of yoga. So that yoga is basically referring here to Bhakti Yoga because the immediate next verse is about Bhakti Yoga. So it is very quite clear. So this is how we understand how Bhakti Yoga is transcendental, and other paths they have to lead to transcendence, to Bhakti Yoga. So the next question is how this knowledge of Krishna, which leads to conclusive engagement devotionals, is acquired. And Krishna has already answered this in 4.34, that to acquire transcendental knowledge, one needs to go to one who is in possession of it. In this case, it means a devotee. So by service and surrender, one may acquire such knowledge from a devotee. Is there any other means of acquiring this knowledge? So in the 10.10 to 11, the Lord gives himself the alternate means. Thus, both the devotee and the Lord are means by which knowledge is acquired. So let's see verse number 10 to 11. तेषां सततयुक्तानां भजतां प्रीतिपूर्वकं ददामि बुद्धियोगं तं येन माम् उपयन्ति ते. Tesam, unto them, Satata Yuktanam, always engage Bhadatam in rendering devotional service, Priti Purvakam, in loving ecstasy, Dadami, I give, Buddhi Yogam, real intelligence, Tam, that, Yena, by which, Mam, unto me, Upayanti, come, that, they. Translation, those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I with the understanding by which they can come to me. This is very clear, 10.10. And then next verse. तेषाम् एवानुकम्पार्थम् अहम् अज्ञानजं तमः नाशयामि आत्मभावस्थो Jnanadipena bhasvata. Tesam, for them, eva certainly, anukampa artham, to show special mercy. Aham, I, ajnanjam, due to ignorance, tama, darkness, nashayami, dispel, atma bhava, atma bhava, within their hearts, stha, situated, jnana of knowledge, dipena, with the land, bhasvata, glowing. Translation: to show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their heart, destroy with the shining light of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So it is quite clear that the way to acquire this knowledge is approaching the devotee and the Lord. That's the only way. The conclusion is that Bhakti Yoga is acquired by the grace or the devotee of the Lord, uh, and it is also transcendental to the modes of material nature. Now comes the question: is that the plan of the Lord? So Bhagavad Gita is talking about different things, and we have seen that there are different paths. It has to lead to transcendence, which is bhakti. So, what is the plan of the Lord? So, the natural culmination of other yogas in bhakti has been hinted. This is imperative in order that their practitioners are directed to the path of transcendence. Such indirect proof by inference and necessity is sufficient to indicate a connection between other yoga practices and bhakti. This connection includes their culminating in devotional service. So, do the words of the Gita offer substantial direct evidence of this point, thereby substantiating what we are claiming? In this subsection, the strategy will be to analyze one very important verse as being basic to the premise. This verse reveals the Lord's plan, wherein He accepts different paths from all manner of yogas to devotion. And what is that verse in which the plan of the Lord is revealed to us? That is verse number 4.11. Let's go to that. ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते तांस्थैव तथैव भजाम्यहम् मां वर्तमानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्य पार्थ सर्वशः. Ye, all who yatha as mam unto me prapadyante surrender tan them tatha so eva certainly bhajami reward ham I mama my vartama path anuvartante follow manushya all men partha o son of pratha sarvasya in all respects. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Okay, so quite a straightforward verse. In the second chapter, Lord Krishna explains the contents of Gita in brief. Krishna expresses his desire that Arjun should fight. He expects Arjun to cooperate, but in the beginning of the third chapter, Arjun prolongs the discussion and wants clarification of the conflict between renunciation and work. Krishna realized that his friend could not be motivated so quickly. Then the Lord explains work and renunciation as parts of the same process. He encourages Arjun to work by fighting, surrendering the results to him as an act of devotion. This is the culmination of all work. 3.9 and 3.30. Despite such arguments, Arjun was inclined not to act and wanted to know the cause of his reticence. 3.36. After explaining the influence and the cause of lust, the Lord begins the fourth chapter by explaining transcendental knowledge. It is that clement by which one can come from Sakam Yoga, Karma Yoga to Nishkam Karma Yoga, or passion to goodness. Such transcendental knowledge considers knowledge of him, his birth, incarnations, and activities. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yogi tatvata. So verse number 4.9. The result of such knowledge is coming to Krishna. This is the concluding line of 4.9. Imam yogeti takva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. So takta deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. So that is 4.9, the concluding line of 4.9. Following on, verse 4.10 explains that coming to Krishna through transcendental knowledge is preceded and qualified by the development of bhav. or transcendental love for him. How does Krishna measure the rewards attributed to the practicing devotee? And what about those who do not develop ecstatic attachment for the Lord and do not care for transcendental knowledge of him? What is their destination? And how does Krishna reciprocate with them? And therein comes the verse number 4.11, which we have just read. So the Lord answers these questions in 4.11. As you surrender, as one surrenders, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects. So two things can be deducted from this statement. The use of the word prapadyante and the use of the word mama vartama. The word ye in conjunction with the generic usage of the word manushya, all men, refers to two classes. One is the direct reference to the previous verse, perfected souls who have attained transcendental love for Krishna and have attained his eternal abode. In this context, the verse refers to his loving reciprocation with his devotees, awarding them their ontological forms and eternal service in that realm. Equally relevant, he also refers to everyone else who has not achieved a liberated status. These practitioners have been the subject of discussion in the chapters leading to this verse. The first meaning of ye addresses the conclusion of the current argument and not its methodology. Thus, the second meaning is more relevant to the subject under discussion. This argument will confine itself to this word usage. All paths. The words mama vartamanu vartante translate as everyone follows my path. The words indicate a very conclusive understanding. Whatever situation one is in, whether karmi, jnani, yogi, they are on the path of the Lord. Very important. They are on the path of the Lord. The word mama indicates that they are not just arbitrary processes arrived at by speculation, random choice, or even some sage's formulation. They are my path. Possessive tense indicates that they are designed by him and lead to him. This is accentuated by the use of the word sarvasha or in all respects. The later reference, sarvasha, refers to all processes in all their efforts and results. The connotation of the word all respects indicates any causal, effectual, or procedural factors. From this, the clear indication is that Krishna accepts all other processes as being paths of elevation, which is already confirmed in the second and the third chapters, 2.39 and 3.3. Okay, so what is the plan for all the paths? The next point arises from the first. If Krishna has a plan for these paths have been designed, for which these paths have been designed, what is that plan? And is there more than one plan? So the word prapadyante in conjunction with the use of the word bhajami is very definitive. Krishna states that all these paths are means of surrendering to him. This is a very broad topic and it can take much time to discuss. There are basically two methods of this surrender. Because all paths are based on authority of the Vedas and Vedic tradition, which is established by the Lord in 15.15, then acceptance and following is surrendering to him. That this is the causal, okay, the causal factor. And the result, the result of following all these paths is that it leads to surrender to Krishna, which is effective. So there is the causal factor and there is the effective factor. The causal factor is that because all the paths, they are based on authority of the scriptures, which is established by Lord. So the acceptance to follow it, that becomes the beginning point. And what will be the effect of that? The result of following these paths is that it leads surrender to Krishna. So that is effective. The word sarvasha is also directed at the surrendering process, as well as the following of the paths which are related, confirming both usages of prapadyante. The word prapadyante is always found in reference to devotional service. It is inseparable from the terminology of Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, one should readily accept that the goal of all these paths is to come to the stage of complete surrender to Krishna. Those who are cynical of the exclusive usage of this word will be hard pressed to show otherwise. So it will be difficult for any other type of interpretation for the word prapadyante. The word prapadyante is prefixed by the word mum. Any idea that surrender should be to oneself, to demigods, or other forms of the Lord is eliminated by this obvious usage. So Krishna is standing before Arjun in his two-handed form, stating that something obvious surrender to me. The word bhajami is as exclusive a bhakti term as prapadyante. However, it is a statement by the Lord that he worships or serves such practitioners. The words yatha, tatha indicate the measured reciprocation by Krishna with the follower. Therefore, the words prapadyante and bhajami reflect each other, confirming and strengthening the personal and emotional aspect of the verse. Surrender to and reciprocation with Krishna is further confirmed by Tan bhajami, I reward them. This can only be effectively mirrored if the surrender is to Krishna. In other words, Krishna is rewarding the devotee because he is the recipient of the surrender and reciprocates. The conclusion from this analysis has been earlier stated is that the Lord has inaugurated different yoga paths which are meant to bring their practitioners to stage of bhakti yoga. Now one may readily question what is the need for all these paths if bhakti is the real means and end of spiritual practice. So the multiplicity of yoga practices apparently causes vast scope for confusion. Why not just present one path for all? So, so I think as we discussed, it's quite clear that we have variety, and individuals they will have variety, and variety is it's an attribute, it's an ornament for a person, for a personality, and because of that, uh, just asking them to surrender to Krishna is not going to work out because they are at different stages of levels of mentality and consciousness. So there will be multiple consciousness, and when there are multiple consciousness, there is the need for connecting those people to different paths, but ultimately bringing them to the highest path, which happens in a sequence, in a ladder, like a ladder, step by step ladder, which goes to the highest point, like that. Okay, so now there are some examples from the Bhagavad Gita referring to other philosophies to bring Arjun to the point of bhakti. And then we have shared so many earlier in the previous sessions, but we can just go through some of them. Three examples we can take. So in verse number 4.32, Lord Krishna concluded a series of verses beginning with 4.25 with the words Evam, Bahuvida Yagya, translated as all these different types of sacrifices, indicates that different sacrifices are born of different types of work, and the practitioners yanti to advance to the supreme atmosphere. So this supreme atmosphere is indirectly indicating Bhakti Yoga. Example 2 in verse 6.46, 6 chapter 46 verse, compares the relative merits of the renunciant yogi, jnani, karmakandi. But the Lord certifies the yogi as the best, and in 6.47 describes Bhakti Yoga as the best of all yoga systems. Yoginam api sarvesham madgantar ataratmana saddhavam bhajate omam. So that verse. And then example 3, which is 15 chapter 15th verse, that सर्वस्य च हृदि सन्निविष्टो मतस्मृतिर्ज्ञानम् अपूर्णं च वेदेश्च सर्वम् अववेद्य वेदान्तकृत वेदविद एव च. So that explains Krishna as the goal and compiler of the Vedas and the Vedanta. Verses 16 to 18 describe the philosophy of the Vedas, and 19 summarizes that as knowing Krishna's supremacy and engaging in devotional service. In this way, the read processes recommended as Vedas in the Vedas are clearly explained as culminating to Bhakti. Right? So with this, we can conclude the discussion about how bhakti transcends the mortal material nature, other paths they lead to bhakti, and um, ultimately the reserved plan of the Lord, the reason why he has spoken about different paths, so that finally he wants to bring everyone to the path of bhakti. Okay, any questions or comments now?
No, Prabhuji. All is pretty much straightforward.
Okay, so then we can come to the last concluding section of our, I think, series of decoding the conclusion of Gita. This is a system of Jaimini Rishi, which is quite very popularly acceptable throughout all classes of philosophers, and it is very logical, step-by-step understanding of the conclusion of any scripture. So, what is the system of Jaimini? So, Jaimini Muni had developed a 6-point system for analyzing the essence of a text. This procedure is traditionally accepted as valid, and we shall apply this process to the Gita to reveal the essence of Lord's instructions from the Gita. This process may also be applied to a chapter or a series of verses. If the Gita's purpose is to bring everyone to devotional service, then the inclusion of other yoga systems cannot have a second purpose. Thus, the natural conclusion will be the confirmation of what we discussed till now. So, in summary, this process excavates the main theme of a text through an analysis of 6 factors. These factors are as follows. Factor 1 and factor 2 combined together, because it is the opening text of the opening verse of uh, opening text of a book and the closing text of the book. So study of a connection between the first and the last line of a text to see what common points are being emphasized. So third point is seeing what is repeated most often in the entire text, as repetition implies something which is important. Fourth point, what is extensively glorified over and above anything else. This is in terms of quantitative analysis. Fifth point is that which is most distantly and specifically emphasized. This is in terms of qualitatively. And the last point is understanding what is being proven through the logical progression of the text. So let us test this with the verses of the Bhagavad Gita. So the greater the agreement in the analysis of the 6 points, the stronger the resultant conclusion. In other words, if the analysis of all 6 points concurs on the same theme, such a conclusion is stronger than if some of the points indicate one thing, while others another. Lack of consistency will happen if the work being analyzed is imperfectly composed. One would not expect such a result with the writings of Vyasdev or teachings of Lord Krishna. So now let us see. So the process, the first verse. Let's see the first verse, and we are testing the point 1 to 2, which is the first verse and the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Are they saying the same thing? So the first verse spoken by Lord Krishna, which constitutes an instruction, is second chapter 11th verse. Here he is emphasizing 2 things. As Arjun surrendered to him as Guru to eradicate his fear and bewilderment, the Lord immediately pacified Arjun and instructed him not to lament. Second, by inference, the Lord speaks about knowledge beyond gross and subtle bodies, by which one will be free from lamentation. So, see, although the Bhagavad Gita starts from, obviously, is starting from 1.1, but 1.1 is not to be considered because Krishna is not speaking here. It is basically a conversation between Dhritarashtra and uh, Sanjay, right? So basically, the Gita actually starts from 2.11. Okay. Now, what is the last verse? 18.66 is the final instruction of the Lord. Lord Krishna is clearly stating the same thing spoken in the first verse, but directly. Ma sucha sarvadharma parityaja ma ekam sharanam raja amta sarva papebhyo mokshami ma sucha. Ma sucha means do not fear. The same word found repeated 3 times in the first verse is stated here. Krishna once again reassures Arjuna, but now the means for becoming fearless and free of lamentation are very clear. How? He says, become my devotee, mam ekam sharanam vraja. What was implicit in verse 11 by the use of the word Pandit or learned man is openly declared here. Thus, in the very beginning, the Lord wanted Arjuna to surrender and be a devotee. What was not clear in the beginning is certainly clear at the end. The end of a book is its conclusion and summary. The Lord invokes memory of Arjun's fearfulness by the word Masucha, indicating that he, from the beginning of the text, desired that Arjun surrender to him. Thus, both in the beginning and end, Krishna is recommending devotional service for Arjun. Now, the third point, what is repeated most often? Many things are repeated within the Gita. However, a statistical study shows that nothing is as extensively repeated as bhakti. While devotional service is mentioned in every chapter, other practices such as karma and jnana are discussed only in chapters specifically related to those chapters. In addition, such repetition is numerically inferior to repetition of bhakti. So below, these are the quotes which are emphasizing and recommending bhakti yoga. So which are these quotes? 2.61, 3.30, 4.10, 5.29, 6.47, 7.17, 8.14, 9.34, 10.9, 11.54, 12.20, 13.19, 14.26, 15.19, 16.5, 17.28, 18.65. So all the chapters has got repetition of bhakti. This indicates that what is spoken of most often by the Lord, verified through constant repetition, is devotional service. The above is by no means a comprehensive list. Most of these verses quoted refer to bhakti directly. There are numerous other verses which indicate activities in bhakti or indirectly speak about bhakti. Fourth analysis, what is being distinctively glorified? So glorification means exclusive appreciation of particular thing. In viewing the Gita, we find verses like 4.3, Bhakto Sime Shaka Chetri, 9.31, Name Bhakta Pranasyati, 11.54, Bhaktya Tva Ananya Shakya, 18.54, Bhaktyamam Vijanati, where devotional service is exclusively glorified as the only means for knowing, seeing, and pleasing Krishna. Other things like karma, jnana, yoga are presented as stepping points to develop bhakti. They are always compared to each other rather than receiving exclusive recognition. As in the case of bhakti, it is clear that Lord Krishna glorifies bhakti more extensively than any other process. Fifth analysis, what is specifically mentioned? Throughout the Gita, different yoga systems and types of knowledge are presented. Ultimately, they are meant to achieve the supreme. The Lord has generally presented two categories of transcendentalist, the impersonalist and the personalist. In the beginning of the chapter 12, Arjun asks which of these is superior. The whole chapter is devoted to answering this question and unilaterally establishing the supremacy of devotional service as being easier and more perfect. Herein, it is devotional service that is mentioned unconditionally and specifically. It is also described in comparison to other yoga practices and is shown to be superior. The same is also witnessed by the verses 6.46, 6.47, 15.19, 18.58, 18.64, 18.65, 18.66, to quote only a few of them. Here, unilateral glorification that comparatively exceeds any other in the text is repeated over and over again. The conclusion is that bhakti stands out as being uniquely glorified above any other prefix in the Gita. And the last analysis, and then we conclude our series and this session also. What is established by logic? So the Lord develops a consistent logical progression in the chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. So these can be summarized briefly. In the first, so we'll go through 1 to 18 chapters. We'll summarize that. First chapter, Arjun is in dilemma caused by attachment to material affairs. Krishna is only one capable of solving this problem through the medium of the Gita. Second, we are spiritual entities. By working in transcendental knowledge, we can attain the supreme. Third, The essence of such work is knowledge and detachment. Knowledge means Fourth, knowledge means to know Krishna's birth activities and non-doership in matters of the results of work. Fifth, by working in such knowledge, one will recognize the Lord as Paramatma. Sixth, this also can be achieved through Ashtanga Yoga, but of all yoga practitioners, the Bhakti Yoga is the best. Bhakti Yogi is the best. Yoginam api sarvesham. Seventh, knowledge of the Lord as Super Soul leads to knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which develops into love. 8. By such attachment, one remembers him at the time of death and enters the spiritual realm. 9th, by hearing the glories of the Lord in unalloyed devotion, one becomes a fully liberated soul. 10th, Arjuna realizes the supreme position of Krishna, citing the authority of sages. The Lord reveals his presence in everything. In the ensuing chapters, Krishna's supreme position is further highlighted. 11th, as the universal form. 12th, the object of devotion, the highest attainment of life. 13, the super soul who is always transcendently situated. 14, the control of the modes of nature. 15th, the supreme worshipable object as sung in the Vedas. 16th, accepted by devotees and rejected by demons. Worship 17th, worship according to the modes of nature by the less intelligent. 18th, but the sole refuge and shelter for the surrendered devotees of the Lord. So this logical progression concludes in and repeatedly emphasizes devotional service. So it would be very deceptive to concord the words of the Gita to arrive at any other logical sequence in Krishna's teachings. So that's why the Gita is consistent and thus must does possess a very concisely structured message. So the conclusion of this last point through logic is being established in the Gita. So the conclusion of um, the system of Jaimini. All 6 points conquer, which indicates a strong consensus on the theme and the clearly structured message of Gita. One can readily conclude that from the first to the last, by constant repetition, quantitative and qualitative, exclusive glorification, and consistent logical development, devotional service to the Lord is the theme of the Gita. As the Lord is supreme, so is devotion to Him. So this conclusion applied to the initial premises stated in the beginning of this particular session confirms the understanding that Bhakti is also transcendental. Sri Krishna mentions these other yoga systems to attract different types of conditioned souls to his devotional service. Um, yeah, so in the previous section, it was shown that Krishna had introduced various yoga systems. This is meant to appeal to the faith and nature of different practitioners at different stages of advancement. And he has done this as a conscious strategy to get their attention, being the best authority on spiritual matters. But the purpose of the Gita is to establish devotional service to Krishna as the ultimate duty of everyone. Thus, these systems have been introduced as a means to bhakti and not an end in themselves. All right, so with this, we are concluding this particular series on decoding the conclusion of the Gita. And also the session, today's session, the system of Jaimini Rishi, which is very logical in nature, and the points given are also very logical. So any last comment or questions?
Prabhuji, I think you have very smoothly taken across all the various points. Maybe this sequence, if you can also share in the notes to your talk, in the notes, the verse numbers in the sequence, the way you have taken us through your talk. So one can read the purports, all of these purports in detail.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yes. That should be fine.
Okay, all right. So thank you so much for having this wonderful series on decoding the conclusion of the Gita. such an important and critical analysis of the Gita. And hopefully, I wish and pray that everyone can understand it very, um I think, in a simple way, because it's not presented in complicated structure. It's presented
Correct.
very sequentially, and there are so many logical points to it. So I hope everyone is able to naturally conclude and deduct how and why we say that Bhakti Yoga is the attainment of the highest attainment and the goal of the Bhagavad Gita, and the only way to attain the Lord.
Prabhuji,
And
also one more
finally,
query.
how the Lord is ultimately personal, because that is the goal of, I mean, to say that Bhakti Yoga is the conclusion, is the highest attainment. It basically, ultimately, it leads to the fact that the Lord is a person, although he's impersonal also at the same time. He's unlimited, so he can manifest anything. But very clearly, he's uh, answering Arjuna's question that how personal aspect of the Lord is superior to the impersonal aspect, and that's how Bhakti Yoga is also connected to that.
Also, Prabhuji, I want to just add, when during these lectures, if you can share maybe some slides with some sort of flow chart, how we do in engineering, that these are the points. So, in a very logical manner, we are establishing an overview and then we are elaborating on that overview. So it maps much faster and easier. So I could be of assistance to you in developing those screenshots if you need any assistance.
Yeah, that will be very helpful. I think it will be a great service also, because so what I can do is I can share the entire series, the notes of that, and then you can make a flowchart of that, of maybe each and every series that we have covered, or the chapters,
Right.
uh, like that. So that will be very helpful, useful for everyone.
Correct. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Prabhuji.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, the audience, for joining also.
Thank you.
And I really hope that this has cleared many misconceptions about the Bhagavad Gita as being uh, promoting different paths with different goals and everything. At the same time, also, avoid misinterpretation of the Bhagavad Gita, and it puts up everything in place. So I hope it justifies that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.